What's up, guys? Christian here with another video. Today I really wanted to kind of dive in on how Jesus and Job kind of had parallels of what they were going through, how they had to follow God's will and they knew that they had to stick to his plan and have faith in God that ultimately this is something that needs to be done and it is happening, but we really need to focus our eyes on God and his plan, what he has in store for us. Job was really questioning why God was doing this, but he never denounced him, never got really angry. He was more frustrated with the situation that he was put in, but ultimately he knew that God had a reasoning for all of this. And Jesus, when it was coming time to be turned over to the authorities, he really was relying on God and leaning on God. Even though they knew that their flesh wanted to survive, they knew that there was something else that was in store in God's will. So we're going to go into that. Our faithfulness first relies on casting away the flesh and giving our praise to God. Job is put through challenges where first everything was taken from him and next his own flesh was even plagued. God knew that Job was a strong follower, put trust that even when Satan was trying to hurt him, that he would not resent God. Job, wanting death for he was in immeasurable pain, knew that he was being tested and understood that he must stay faithful. He prayed to God, and Job 6:8-10, then I would still have this consolation, my joy in unrelenting pain, that I had not denied the words of the Holy One. So Job knows not to resent God, but to suffer until God really takes him. Life and living is our testimony to God because he is the greater of our life. We have to respect God and to have faith that he will take care of us, even through death. For if we care for him in our mortal life, he will continue to care for us in all the rest of our existence. So let's bring this over to Jesus, right? In the very end of his chapters of life, he is sitting in the garden and he's praying to the Father. He's saying, help me, help me. I know this situation ends with me giving up my life, but there is still a part of him that is scared in a sense. To reach this light, we need to stop living in our bodies and deny what our body wants. We need to also get out of our mind's confusion and getting stuck in that. For our body wants things of the world, and that wants to corrupt us and hurt us. Like sex, drugs, money, greed. And our mind is just trying to make sense of the world. Our mind is really dictated by fear. How will I do this? What will other people think of me? Where do I find my own personality, my own drive, my own will in this world? And our mind will corrupt our entire alignment of what we should be doing in the world. But to live by the Spirit's will is to cast our body's desire so that we can think clearly and not corrupt our lives. We need to consciously be existing with our spirit and not through our body, for our body really wants other things of this world, either sexual temptations or substance use temptations. And really, stability is a big thing in our entire society, a really big driving force for people to fall into evil ways of ill-gotten gain and trying to have this envy of being above others. And to exist and be conscious through our mind, we're constantly just stuck thinking in loops, and ultimately we spiral down and we fall into depression, or we go into manic modes where we're just trying to grasp onto anything to make sense of what the world is doing around us. And we start trying to grab for control so that we can feel like we know what's going on. But if we live by the Spirit and trust God, his will for us, we will be successful. We will find our personality, because our personality is not in ideals. Our personality is not found in groups. Our personality is our spirit that God made us. We are all separate in that way. Our bodies are made of the same physical stuff, and our minds are cast away when we're dead. Our minds are just our storage containers of our existence here on earth. After that, we're with God, and ultimately he has all of the knowledge that we would need. So how do we live in the Spirit? How do we get to this point where we're vibrating on the same frequency of the Spirit and not in our mind or our body? Biggest thing is to pray. We ultimately are able to align ourselves with the Father, find out what we need to do, and really put ourselves back on track like a train. The rails are there, we just need to go get right on them. And it takes time, but prayer, I see it as, it's not requesting of things. It's really a conversation with the Father. It's sitting there in moments of silence and even talking out loud. If you're in the car riding alone, or even in the shower, just saying, hey God, I know you're here and I want to be here with you as well. Really just start talking about some things that are going through your life. Kind of like a counselor, a psychologist, if you want to call it that way. But he's the greatest therapist that we could ever have, for he knows us more than anybody could ever, even ourselves. So instead of finding vices like being drunk in the body and being trapped in our mind, the spiral that we go down in our thoughts, let's turn to the Father. Let's go to the things that really are our spiritual superpower, our one-way ticket out of living in sin. So I encourage you to really deep dive in your Bible. This is where we learn the law, and we really need to pray for God to open the pathways in our brain to interpret the law and understand it. For the law is dead within us until we start living in the Spirit, and then we start seeing why we want to live this way. And ultimately, deep diving, we start to find our gifts, our ways that we're supposed to live our life. But ultimately, we want to deep dive into these gifts that we are given. And this is how we find them, by going into the Word, living our lives in accordance to God's commandments. And then we start seeing come to light our gifts. And our gifts can be done for evil when corrupted by sin, but they can be done for good when living by God's will and His word. So ultimately, Jesus laid out the plan for all of us. We must deny our flesh, deny our minds, as we'll get trapped in those. We must live by the Spirit, what it calls us to do, and it is to be good and accept God into our lives. We're like a puzzle, and He's the last puzzle piece. Thank you, guys.